Hello guys, I was talking with my patrons recently and it has come to my attention that it would be useful at this point where we have made quite a bit of progress with our articulation of the depth psychology of personality. You know, this is my approach. This is what distinguishes me from a lot of people who understand personality more mechanically, more systematically, you might say also. Not to say that my approach is only like a maximal level of advantages and strengths and pros and no cons. Ultimately, it's a matter of what you decide to choose. I choose to look at the depth psychology approach, so thinking of the likes of Jung, Klein, Lacan, Freud, Winnicott, and all these important psychoanalysts that allowed us to have a much better understanding of the unconscious sources of our life, including our psychology, including our temperament, our behavior, and our personality, of course, our personality. So I argue that this is a deeper way of understanding our personality, of identifying our personality, than the way in which we look at it through the more manifest content rather than the latent content. The latent content is what I focus on. However, what this also means is that sometimes when I speak, it could get a little confusing because the unconscious itself is confusing, right? And so I've used a lot of words, and what my supporters were saying is that it could be useful to do a few videos where I return to these important ideas and concepts, these terms that constitute a kind of glossary of my approach, a Renian glossary, as someone called it. And I think they're absolutely right. So because we want to clarify any possible confusion. And as you will see, it's not that like there is a million different terms that need to be learned. There's a few, and I'm going to begin with the following ones. For this series, I'm not saying that I will cover them all in this video. Archetypes, symbol, cipher, sign, fantasy with PH, fantasy with an F, individuation, adaptation. Okay? So if we begin at the most profound, the deepest unconscious layers, we are of course in the area of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious, a lot of people think that it was discovered by Carl Jung. In fact, it's hard to say who discovered the collective unconscious, but the reality is that Freud was also aware of a collective unconscious, and that other psychoanalysts accepted the idea of a collective unconscious. The difference is that for Jung, the collective unconscious was the location of the primordial archetypes or the primordial images, and that is a typically Jungian notion that I am embracing. If you want to hear more, stick around. I just want to mention that I have a Patreon page. The link is down below, right in the description box. That's the first link to my Patreon page. You should check it out if you're not a supporter yet. For a small amount every month or every year, it's like only a few euros or dollars a month. It's really not expensive. It's kind of a steal, to be honest. You get access to a whole library of exclusive Patreon content, videos called the deep dives. There's a lot of it already, and you get access to our Discord server, the Fourfold. Come hang out with us, and you help me massively. I could not do this work without you, and I need you to be able to continue, so please consider supporting me. So thank you for that. So now, returning to the topic, the archetypes. What is an archetype? Because this is a notion that I fully take up in my work, all right, including in my upcoming NI book. So in this respect, I am completely Jungian. Okay, and the other people who do personality assessments, personality discussion, theory, and so on are not Jungian because they don't talk about the archetypes, or they think that because of their scientific approach, the archetypes are not scientific enough, what have you. That's okay. Depth psychology is depth psychology, and it certainly explores things that are beyond science as well, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to wear that on our sleeves. So archetypes are entities that live, so to speak, inside the collective unconscious. They're in the collective unconscious. They are psychic entities. They don't have a material body. They don't have a biological form. They have a psychic form. And what do they contain? They contain an aggregation of the collective experience over millennia. So in a sense, they are the repositories of the wisdom and the knowledge of the ages, of the ancients. Archetypes contain and condense within themselves all that experience has taught people. They guide us in us being able to psychically navigate the world. We can imagine that navigating the world, knowing what to do, intuitively knowing in the situation or in another situation what we should be doing, in being motivated to do certain things and not other things, with often the magical result that this contributes to an enhancement of our well-being. Just all this kind of unscientific knowing how, or accessibility to a knowing how, that cannot be reduced to science, can be linked to the agency of the archetypes within us. And they are in the collective unconscious. Now, there is an archetype, and this is something that Jung didn't talk about, but I'm talking about. There is an archetype that in fact is, if you like, straddling the collective unconscious and the personal unconscious. And the reason why I think this archetype is essential, necessary, is that the archetypes, if we say that they have an influence over our lives, as they do, they have to have an influence at the level of our consciousness. Even though we are ourselves not conscious of the archetypes, we are still acting in consciousness under their sway. So the archetypes must leak into the personal unconscious. So there must be an archetype that is straddling the two, that is the, if you like, the stitching between the collective unconscious and the personal unconscious. This is what I call the archetype of the personality. And the archetype of the personality has a synonym, which is the symbol. And we'll talk more in the next video about what the symbol is exactly. Okay guys, thank you so much and talk to you next time.